Good evening and welcome to Nurturing Our Roots, the journey from slavery to freedom, live Zoom sessions with Antoinette and Karen. We're live every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, the talk show where ordinary people with extraordinary family stories can be heard. If you have a family story, as always, and would like to share it with us, we would love to hear it. Please contact us at nurturingourroots@gmail.com. I'm Antoinette, and I am going to turn it over to my co-host, Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Antoinette. How are you this evening?
I am doing well with all of this weather that we have, but I'm doing well. And you?
I'm wonderful. Thankful that we still have power.
Oh, yes, yes, by all means. Well, Karen, you know what I have to do for about 5 minutes, just disappear for a moment, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I want to welcome everyone out there in our audience. And if you're joining us in our chat room, please be certain to put your questions in the live chat. As Antoinette said, we are here every Tuesday night and we care about your stories. If you have a family story that you would like to share with us, please email us at nurturingourroots@gmail.com and we will be in touch to make arrangements to hear your family story. Tonight, I'm really excited. Our guest, so to speak, our guest is my cousin, Dr. Antoinette Harrell, who has done a lot of wonderful work in genealogy and peonage research. I've seen her work on the Vice network, and she has spent countless hours in the National Archives in Washington conducting peonage research in Class 60 litigation case files from 1907 to 1973. Antoinette has interviewed African Americans who were held in bondage through sharecropping, involuntary servitude, and peonage. And I am so looking forward to her sharing with all of you more about the research that she's done. Tonight, she's going to present 2 case files where we all will get to learn a little bit more about this whole concept of peonage. We hear a lot about slavery, but we don't often hear about peonage, and Antoinette has coined the peonage detective, and I'm just so happy that she's here to share some of her stories of her peonage research with us. Welcome back, Antoinette.
Thank you. Karen, I'm really excited to share knowledge with everyone concerning this particular subject because oftentimes people say, I know I saw them in 1920, but where did they go in 1930? So what I really want people to do is look at some new records. As always with genealogies, we're looking at new records, discovering new material to research. And so I do have a PowerPoint presentation I would like to share. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ready to share.
Wonderful.
1 minute, please. Share. Got it. All right. All right. So what I'm going to do, I know some of the files may be a little somewhat small, but what I'll do is kind of zoom in. Sharecropping, involuntary servitude, and peonage. We're going to be looking at records from the Department of Justice files, Attorney General records, NAACP files, and the FBI files. All right, let's just go to the next slide. Peonage detective, involuntary servitude, modern day slavery. And I'm so happy that our family did not get caught up in that new coming of slavery because it was very easy to do because most people who did not own any land had nowhere to go. they became sharecroppers or tenant farmers. All records that you will be looking at, I located these records at the National Archives, Records Group number 60. Pictures always tell a story. And one of the photographs that I see here, all of these photographs are out of Tangipahoa Parish from the Library of Congress. And at the very last photograph you see here, except for the last one, I'm sorry, this was just another photograph that I just wanted to share with the overseer on the horse, looking at the people, overseeing the people working. It was just a reminder of slavery, just basically, having someone to oversee them. And you can see based up on the clothes that they're wearing, this was not back in the period, this was definitely in the 1900s. Mhm.
But it's hard to tell from that photo that it's not slavery, but for the clothing. Uh,
Yes.
because the clothing would have been more in tatters.
Mhm, mhm. Now,
That's
this record,
amazing.
I know some of them are very hard to see, but this is a letter from the Department of Justice on the Department of Justice letterhead to Office of the United States Attorney. And this came out of Clarksdale, Mississippi, dated 1921. And it was a woman named Lucinda Holloman. And she was really complaining about being held on this plantation. Let me just read the letter. It says that the Attorney General, Washington, D.C., sir, herewith I hand you the facts as related to one Lucinda Holloman, a Negro woman who complained of one Mims Wilson holding her children in Peonage. I know nothing of the facts except as detailed by her, and the matter is submitted for such action by the department and as my seem proper. So this is an attorney, and he was writing, trying to get them to investigate this case. Now, this is 1920. So if someone found her on the 1920 census, but you didn't see her in 1930. Now, mind you, she said children, not a child. So there was children, and the case study here is who, Lucinda Holloman, where, Clarksdale, Mississippi, when, 1921, who held them, Mims Wilson. So these are the type of records that's very important when you're looking at anything, when you can't find your family members on the census, and you hear people all the time say, Karen, my family just disappeared. Where'd they go? Have you ever heard people say that?
Not only have I heard people say that, I've experienced that.
Yeah, yourself. Yes, yes. Mhm. All right, the next letter is once again, this is still supporting the evidence of Lucinda. Now, in this, she said her family consists of one daughter, about 14 years old, named Mary Fraley, and a son about 12 years old named Frank Fraley. Both children by a former husband, and a baby boy about 1 year old. Her husband's name is Hick Holloman. In 1920, she lived on a plantation of Mr. Will Lawler, Dublin, Coahoma County, Mississippi. You see, that's a lot of information that if one person was researching their family history, what would they find? The name of her children, what plantation they was on, and the name of her former husband, and the location, and the date. Let's see what else is said. In 19, okay, I read that. About December, she became dangerously ill, and Lawler sent her to the home of a relative, Elnora Nathan, in Sunflower County for nursing, care and nursing. She stayed there a while and not improving, went into Charity Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi, that remained until about March of this year. When she went to Nathan, she took with her the bed stand or the bed stool, a chair, a trunk, cooking utensils, dishes, and clothes. She also took her children with her. Elnora Nathan and her husband, Charlie Nathan, lived on the plantation of Mr. Mims Wilson, about 6 miles from Slaughter, the Sunflower County, where Charlie Nathan is a kind of remained. Very hard to read these documents. Superintendent on the plantation, according to the complaint. So you see, that was a lot of information right there. It told who she was living with, who was the last people that knew this woman, her children, what was her possessions at the time. A lot of detailed information.
Yeah.
Now, this is a case of Alan Ward. And I want to go, and then I'll come back. Okay, and then I'll go back to that record. Alan Ward. Now, this record is this is a very heartbreaking record here. Because if you look at it, it was Jackson, Mississippi, 1912. And here's what it says. The department should make an investigation of some matters in Smith and Simpson County in the state. On the line between Smith and Simpson, near what is known as Sullivan's Hollow, lived a man by the name of Ware, WT, I think. And that's what I found a lot of those initials, Karen, which was very complicated with the WT, CD, CH, who had several sons and a son-in-law by the name of Turner. It is reported that the Wells had been stealing Negro boys and selling them over into the Delta. One of the young Wares is a doctor over there and was disposing of the boys. Now, how was they disposing of these boys? Stealing them, selling, and disposing. And that was the word that they used. The Wares was arrested and tried at Mimes, Mississippi, for kidnapping a boy and hiding him out in the home of Turner's over in Simpson until they could get him off to the Delta. Ware's attorney got him out of it without letting all the facts come out. Turner over in Simpson had a brother-in-law whose father was an old Negro named Alan Ward. Ward was under bondage for several years. Allen left his master. Now listen to this. In 1912, he's using the word master.
Antoinette, I'm about I just put both hands on my desk. I'm like, wait a minute now. Held in bondage. I'm looking at the date on the screen, and you're saying held in bondage, and then you said master, and I'm just about ready to just come through the computer screen because this is hard to.
Yes, it is.
This is horrible.
Yes, it is. And as I proceed on, he left his master, W.C. Burns, last year. Burns and his boys, one of them being the brother-in-law of Turner, went down in Jefferson Davis County and found an old Negro and brought him back to Burns' home near McGee under a guard with a gun. They came back the public road, and a Negro, came back. I guess they didn't say to the public road, and a Negro by the name of Durr and living near King's Durr saw them with the gun. So they stole this man, Karen, and took him back.
At gunpoint.
At gunpoint. At gunpoint. I want to go back to this document. Just give me 1 minute because I want to go back to Ward because as you can see, that's something I can't even see my cursor. Ugh. All right, there we go. All right, I want to go back up to this record here. Give me 1 minute. Let me just bring this record down a little bit because we want to do a little case study with Ward, all right?
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking, Karen.
It really is.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
I think some of these people are people they're the ages of, they're born and they lived at a time when we know relatives who lived in that same time period.
Exactly. Now, if we look at Ward, Alan Ward, he was 25 years old. His birthday, about 1855. So we know he was already in this, he was born into slavery, 1855. And so after being emancipated, Karen, he saw slavery twice. Because what did it say? Under his master, Burns, they stole him at gunpoint. Now he was married to a woman named Clarissa Ward. He had two daughters, Lolly and Carrie, and there was a niece and nephew living in a house with him. Here it is again in the 1900s. Here they have him living in Beat 3, Simpson, Mississippi, and he was 44 at that time. He was married in 1878, and he had been married for 22 years. All right, here's another story. Now, this record is very, very complicated to read, but it's about a 15-year-old girl held as a slave when 1924 at Oklahoma. And she was held as a slave. Evelyn Butler was her name. So once again, these documents will give you the name, the location. Let's look at the date here, because that's very important. I don't know what's going on with my cursor, but it's 1924. Do you see that? 1924. The NAACP, this is the same letter about Evelyn when she, and this was reported again 1924, that this white man named was B.H. Moore. And that was something that I really just did not understand why they always use the alphabet, because that's very hard sometimes when there may be two people in the same county with the same abbreviation, names. So the girl, and what he's saying is that they didn't pay the girl any money. And she had a baby for this white man. So the NAACP took a report, and the letter states that the girl is only about 15 years of age. She refused to go, and that the colored people of Hugo are raising money to send to her, I guess to help her. But these are the type of records. The railroad. Now, this was another sad story. Once again, this is 1912. And this is from the Birmingham and Northwestern Railway. April the 1st, 1912. And Karen, in one of the lines, it said that the people was being whipped, they was being beat. In the first paragraph, it said it was currently reported last summer along the lines of road being built that Negroes was made to work against their will, that they was held against their will, and that since they ran away, they was hunted like beasts. If they was found, they was whipped and made to return to the railroad camp. And this Mr. M.W. Els of this city who was last year the mayor of Diebenberg. You see, there it is again. The mayor knew this. So these are the kind of records, once again, peonage cases. And a lot of people who went into that type of bondage, Karen, is because they didn't have any land. There was a lot of people that was just sold off, had to steal away through the night, like May's family. May had to steal away through the night. And you probably heard people say, oh, we had to steal away, through the night because one, we just couldn't get ahead. We heard all the time where people, well, you didn't fare out good this year, so why don't you try again next year?
People working and working and working and never getting ahead.
Right. Now, at one time, I did go into the courthouse records in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, in Attala County, Mississippi. A lot of those records are in the attic because I was looking for the sheriff records. One family, Karen, was sold for a family of 5 people was sold for $20.
What made you
Alan
start
Crawford.
researching this?
I really wanted to learn more about sharecropping. I just really wanted to collect some of the oral histories and document those oral histories from people who really worked as sharecroppers in the 60s. And I wasn't prepared, Karen, for what I was going to hear or see.
Now, we have one concept of sharecropping, and we know it's hard for people to work their way off. Is peonage totally separate and different than sharecropping, or it's all the same?
No, it's totally different. It's when a person is made to, they're forced to work off a debt, whether they, occurred, that debt or not. They was forced by gunpoint, um, brutality, to stay on those places and work their debt off.
And in some cases, some of what you've been sharing with us, some of these people were brought into this system and they weren't even sharecropping. They
Exactly.
were stolen. They were stolen
That's
and
right.
made to work and just work.
Mhm.
Not even paying the debt off, right? Because they didn't have a debt
That's
to
right.
begin with.
Right.
And and this was happening. And I must say this is modern times. You were looking at 1912, 1924. My husband's grandmother was born in 1898. I have a great grandmother born in 1899. They would have been like the ripe ages for to be brought into this type of a system.
Well, let me just inform you that the index at the National Archives basically said that the last cases was reported in 1973. Now, the cases that I've worked on, um, most of the cases was in the 60s. 61 was when May got her freedom. But in St. John Parish, I had families to tell me that they did not get off the plantation until like 65.
Well,
And
I've often said that when I first started doing DNA, I went to get my uncle to give me his DNA sample in Lafourche Parish. And we were just sitting down talking, and he said, "Yeah, when we left the plantation in the late 1960s," I like almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, "Wait a
mm,
minute, Uncle, what do you mean? They were on
mhm,
the Matthews plantation until the late 1960s."
mhm, mhm.
And I guess for some families, it just took a while to pay off your debts and work your way off.
Right. Um, we we must look at the Freeman contracts because that's where it all started at in 1866. Especially if you look at those records and you see a lot of children making their X. I don't even believe that they made their X. I believe the X was forged. Our children as young as 5 years old had to make their X. What child would really be signing a contract at 5 years old?
And they certainly wouldn't understand what that means.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so they went into a new form of slavery. And I've read one book, it's called Worse Than Slavery, you know, because it was, when you think about chattel property and when slavery was legal, people had a reason to protect their chattel property. But after this, it was illegal. So a lot of people was murdered in the process of being on these plantations, and the owners was very scared that they would get away and report that they was being held against their will.
And this definitely could help account for the migration out of the South.
Hmm.
As soon as you could steal away, you take everything that's yours and get out of here.
One of the hardest cases for me to read is when this woman had to leave her children on the plantation. So there was a lot of children that was left on some of these plantations. Not that the women didn't go back and try to get their children, but one woman, she went to try to get her children back, and she was beat with a crowbar for
Mm.
just trying to get her children. And there was another case where this woman was chained to the bed with a trace chain. And when her husband, her common law husband, went to try to get her, it was really ugly. And it was all written up in the report that what happened. The sheriff went to try to get this woman, and he said, "I'm so tired of those son of a bees running away on me." And so he actually, even when the sheriff told him to set her free, he went back and got her and brought her back to that plantation.
Mm, mm. That's
Yeah.
sad.
Any questions coming out the chat?
No questions coming out of the chat, but there was a comment. Let's see here. There was, okay, from Learn from Cell. I didn't know this until I learned of Dr. Harrell's work in 2018. This is why we need reparations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, if you have a question, please type it into the chat and we'll try to get you an answer.
Okay, and I do want to pull up something while we're doing that. All right, here we go. Look at this, Karen. There was a man named Alan Crawford. Alan Crawford and his family sold for how much do you see there? Can you see that? $20.
Oh, wow. Wow. A whole family.
The article included below was discovered at the National Archives by Antoinette Harrell as she researched the locals where she lived, the locals and their family. They lived in Amite, Mississippi, and then they came over to Louisiana. They was asleep in the bed with his wife by his side, August 1926. Crawford Allen, his wife and children, was forced from their beds and their home into the night, according to the article below. Now, here's the article. You see that? Now, you know that it had to be recent because it's typed in the
Right.
newspaper. Two accused of selling a Negro family, and they was indicted in Mississippi on the, indictment in Mississippi case to be followed by the Peonage inquiries of Louisiana. And this was well, they don't have the date here, but it was 1926. And the Department of Justice agents are investigating the report of Negro peonage in Louisiana. Now, it named the people who held them in slavery. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, they kidnapped these people, sold a family of 5 people for $20. Now, it also tells you that it was Alfred and Webb was indicted on testimony. They had gone to the home of Crawford Allen, 50 years old, Negro, near Louisiana border in Amite County, Mississippi. And of course, Amite County, Mississippi is where our Harrell family members come out of.
I'm looking at that. I saw St. Helena over there at
Mm-hmm,
San
mm-hmm.
Diego. Wow.
And it says when they failed to find the woman who they was looking for, her grown daughter, and when they couldn't find the grown daughter, they just took the whole family. When they failed to find her, according to the indictment, they forced Allen to get out of the sick bed and accompanied them to a farm at Fluka, Louisiana. They also forced his wife and 3 children, all under 12 years of age. Now, that is,
It's just sick.
it is. The family was sold for $20. Now, who would buy a family of $50? I want to go down to another. Okay, here's something else I want you to look at here. Now, this is the NAACP record here, and this came out of. Let me just sort of. Oh, I went the wrong way. Sorry. Let me go back. because I really want people to see this. Okay, so this is in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, 1927, on the letterhead of the NAACP Criminal Division. And it was about a sheriff who was charging these men with trumped up charges. And that was both black and white, putting them in jail. And some of the supervisors would come and get these men out of jail and force them to work on the timber, the logging camp in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And they would impose these heavy fines upon them. And if you look at it here, it's all about the plantation. See, J.W. Cottrell and Sheriff Glass of Clarksdale, Mississippi, also in plantations in Coahoma County. So they was taking them out of the jail and putting these men, first of all, trumped up charges, making these charges up, and then putting them in jail. And then somebody would come and pay these heavy fines, and they would have to stay on this plantation and work these debts off. Okay, here it is. Now, when I went into the attic, this is what the attic looked like. These are books that spoke to a lot of the men and women who was being held against their will in involuntary servitude in the attic. Now, it's not all the time that we'll be able to access an attic to get the records. So if you was to go and look for your family member and they would tell you, oh, we don't have the records, but they may not even let you tell you that they are in the attic. Let's see. I want to, all right, here's another picture I want to show you. You see that house behind there? That's a house where people was living.
Wow.
Just about 10 years ago. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it myself. And once I found, and you can see the cabin life right there, but I had to put down my research because I found people in destitute situations where they needed food, they needed clothing, they needed coats. And I remember this young baby saying to me when she put the coat on, she said, now I'm warm. And so, Karen, although I was trying to document sharecropping in that period, but I also ran into a lot of people who was living in conditions that Dr. King has spoke about when he went to Marks, Mississippi.
Antoinette, what year is this when you're there?
Karen, this had to be 11 years ago.
Okay.
11 years ago. And
here we are still trying to justify why there needs to be reparative damage. You know, I had to sit across from a table and have a priest tell me, well, nobody sitting here at this table was ever enslaved, or your parents or your grandparents weren't ever enslaved. But there are people all over this country who are still trying to be made whole after generations of enslavement and the continuation of enslavement through the peonage system, prison system, so many different systems. And this is the perfect example.
Exactly.
Of the lack of benefit to the families who made whoever was enslaving them and holding them in bondage, who made them profitable. But these families in today's world, because 11 years ago to me is in today's world, these families still have not come up to a decent standard of living. They are old. They are old.
Yes. And you see the houses, it was the Shanies, and so that's what they was living in, Karen. And so I actually had to put down my search for the story of sharecropping and really look at helping families. Now here's another record I ran across, where they held these albino brothers as to work in a circus. So let me see if I can. There was another point. I need to go back to the first part right here. Eco and Ico. They was albino and they used them as circus twins. I mean, as okay. Let me just go ahead. You can see it really well. You can see that. Hmm. They kidnapped them and sold them to the circus. So and this was in 1899. You know, they wasn't twins. 6 years old, Eco and his brother Iko. They was kidnapped from their mother's home in Virginia, and they were sold into the circus. So there's a lot of and I found those files there as well. So I just want to let people know that we have to look at different records when we're researching our family history. Any questions coming out of the chat?
No questions, comments.
Mhm.
God bless you, Dr. Harrell. Thank you for the research and sharing because we need to know these things. Someone says, my mother picked cotton as a child and she was born in the 1940s. Yeah,
Mhm.
that absolutely happened. And someone else says, let's see, where is that coming? Oh, this is hard to hear, but not hard to believe.
Yes, yes. I've read comments where people have said that, oh, this woman is just making up these things and nobody would believe that. But you know what? And I don't even comment on it because you saw the documents for yourself. Huh?
Mhm.
The documents are real. And so when Vice did that documentary on helping Donald and that family that had never left the plantation for 5 generations, um, but it's so many more records. So when we can't find our family, we know that they just disappeared out the thin air. Sometimes we have to look at those records, those Peonage files, those type of records. And I definitely would say a lot of those records was created out of the civil rights movement as well. And so that's why those FBI reports and NAAC reports was taken, because people was really filing a complaint about their families being held. And it was brutal, Karen. A lot of it, um, men, I know some men who talked about how their mother was raped right in front of them. They was little boys, and there
Mhm.
was nothing that they can do about it. Um, some sometime it was reported and sometime it wasn't. I remember this was maybe about 10 years ago. It was Dr. Ryan Walters. I walked up to him at a meeting in New Orleans and I said, Dr. Ryan Walters, look, you got to come to the Mississippi Delta with me and see what you just got to lay eyes on it. Well, he committed himself and he came down, and we took a bus of people to the Delta, because not only I was doing the research, but I also was trying to help by bringing in food and clothes to the people who really needed it. Well, when Dr. Ryan Walters saw it, it became very clear why they couldn't get away. Like some people say, well, why they didn't run away? Well, you think about it. If you have 2,000 acres on this side, 4,000 in front of you, the next door neighbor or friends, where are you going to run to?
Nowhere to run.
There was
Nowhere
nowhere to
to
run.
hide.
There was nowhere.
If we think we're going through something now with law enforcement, back then the sheriffs they would definitely turn a blind eye to these types of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and I must say that it was very hard for me because some records are very hard to still read. Like the girls that was missing, 64,000 girls that was missing in 1921 by the Catholic Church. And let me see, since we're speaking about the Jesuits, let me just
Wait.
pull that.
Missing from where?
Okay, give me a minute.
Goodness, I never heard about this.
Really?
No.
Ah, mm,
In this country, or you're talking about Nigeria or somewhere?
no, my dear, in this country.
Oh my God.
I thought I had blogged about it
Mm, mm, mm.
to find that document. But definitely, I'm trying to see if I can find it. Um, yes, Karen, there's a lot of things that happened, but there was 65,000 girls missing. Mm,
Well,
mm.
there's, uh, we say nurturing our roots, the journey from slavery to freedom. There's a lot that happened in between slavery and freedom.
That's right. That's right. I will make sure, since I brought this subject up, that I definitely will make sure I find that record and I will bring that record back
Mhm.
to you. But I do want to share something because every now and then, and can remind me to share that record with you because it just will show you how deeply involved the Vatican has always been in some very ugly and cruel things.
Okay.
Um, from time to time, I will appear on different radio shows to talk about this type of research. And when I tell you the comments, it just goes on and on and on. Like one woman said, "Hello, Miss Harrell. I am deeply in need of a history detective to dig up information on my ancestry. I've come to a dead end." But there is so many stories that I get with people reaching out to me. Some want to tell me their stories. They want to share that story with me about their family. Some people, it's still too hard for them to tell and talk about it, Karen,
Mhm.
because it's very dark. I've had a lot of reporters tell me that it's too dark. I don't want to talk about that. Well, people don't really want to go in the darkness, but if it happened to someone, it happened to them.
I think this might also be why, in many cases, elders don't want to talk. They don't want to share the information with us as we're trying to get information because they have firsthand knowledge. They remember some of these stories that we have yet to learn about.
Hmm.
It's part of what they live.
Hmm. Karen, do you mind when you all are talking about your story coming up with the Jesuits, if I pull that document up
Oh,
during that?
that would be a good time to do it.
I would love to really share that these 64,000 girls just disappear in the thin air, and they was writing Calvin Coolidge, and they was writing to the Vaticans,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just cruel, as to what happened to the people there. Any more comments or questions?
A comment from L. Middleton. It's heartbreaking that thousands of Black people are coming up missing each year, even now. It's absolutely right.
Yes. And that has always been the case. I remember when I first started interviewing the Wall family, and Kane Wall was 105 when I first met him. And he went into great detail about what happened to him. And I remember when he was watching television and he saw this white man on the television, and he got so sick he had to be hospitalized because he thought that the white man was coming to get him because he had told me what happened.
Mm, mm, mm.
And so the family sort of banned me for about a year. I couldn't go around. And then finally, I think it was when a reporter was looking for the family that they felt, okay, it's okay, come back around again.
Wow. But this is something that's just really traumatizing for people. So that's understandable, that they would need to take a break from talking about this. And so apparently Antoinette's a little frozen. If you're in the chat room, if you have any questions about this topic, please type your question in the chat room. Um, as we wait for Antoinette to become unfrozen, have a comment from Learn from Sal. Um, my mother doesn't know or have any family history from Haiti. And after the earthquake, everything was gone. So I'm in the same boat as many African Americans who do not know their history. That's Learn from Sal. I think about Haiti a lot, actually, because the population of New Orleans doubled after the Haitian Revolution. But I think about in all of these natural disasters all around the world, Haiti included. Um, did any records survive? And when you lose so many people to natural disasters, those oral histories don't survive as well. And so it's very difficult. It's absolutely very difficult. And I can definitely see how you would be in the same boat of people who don't know their history. And with this system of peonage that Antoinette is talking about, um, some of these stories, unless you're going to do that deep research that she's done, some of these stories can be gotten from some of our elders. But time is moving forward, and our elders, are becoming fewer and fewer. We're becoming the elders. Welcome back. Glad to see Antoinette's rejumped.
Yes.
Welcome
I'm
back.
it's I don't know what happened for a minute. It just the system was just lost. It just went down. I said, well, maybe it's the weather. But anyway, I'm back.
Yes, you froze up, and so I knew what was going on, so I just continued going.
I kind of figure that, but that's the kind of difficulties we have sometimes. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. But
Absolutely.
anyway, I really wanted to show you something here. Let me just show you this record here because this record is very important. Give me one. So you see, Karen, there's always something new to learn,
Always. Always.
Always. Okay. I'm going to share this with you right quick with the viewers. And I thank everyone that was really patient while we get this up. Okay. Sisters who was modern day slaves. And this was in 2003. We was modern day slaves, ABC News. And so let me just pull up. In 2020, December 20, 2003, as May Miller tell it, she spent her youth in Mississippi as a slave, picking cotton, pulling corn, picking peas, picking butter beans, picking string beans, digging potatoes, whatever it was, that's what you did for no money at all. Miller and her sister Annie tells of bondage end in 60s, not the 1860s, but the 1960s. That's when they were set free. Their story, which ABC News has not confirmed independently, is not unheard of. The Department of Justice records tell of prosecutions well into the 20th century of whites who continue to keep blacks in involuntary servitude, coercing them with threats on their lives, exploiting their ignorance of life and the laws beyond the plantation where they was born. Isn't that something? Don't run away. They'll kill us. And that's what they told them. The sister said that is how it happened. They was born in the 1930s and 40s into a world where their father, Cain Wall, now believed to be 105 years old, had already been forced into slave labor. I wanna just yeah, her father was 104 when I met him. He was still living. And so there was one thing that she wanted. She just wanted ice cream and she couldn't get the ice cream. Okay. Annie Miller was frightened to discuss the experience her family left behind 40 years ago. She would never talk about it. May said, they beat us. May Miller said, they didn't feed us. We had to go and drink water out of the creek. And I remember going to that creek and it was green water. And when I went into the woods and I'm looking for this creek. And when I saw the creek, Karen, the only thing I could do was cry because May wasn't with me, but she had given me good instructions on how to get there. We didn't eat like dogs because they do bring a dog to a certain place to feed dogs. We couldn't have that. So they fed them in a pig, like one of those troughs that you feed a pig in. That's how they fed them.
Oh my
And
God.
sometimes they would throw the food, they would throw it in the yard and watch them just fight over the scraps from the table.
People wouldn't believe that that's something that happened in modern times.
Oh yeah, in modern times, you're right. A lot of people wouldn't believe it, but it did happen. And so, and I just want to share a picture of May with everybody. And May passed away, and this is May here. This is May.
Wow.
That's May, and before she passed away, I was able to get her to speak at different universities. And this is her father, Kane Wall,
Wow.
who was 115 years old when he passed away.
Wow.
But
Amazing.
it was a lot of pain that went with this story, Karen.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
this is her sister who was also held in bondage. That was a very, it was very difficult, Karen. When I say very difficult, I mean, it was very difficult. So a lot of times I have to wear those burdens with the people
We
and
have a
share the pain.
couple of comments.
Mhm.
One question, one comment. I'll do the comment first. The comment is, in my opinion, it sounds a little bit like sharecropping. You can maybe re-explain the difference. And the question is, what is the best way to research if you don't live in that state or no family in that area you know your family have lived in?
Okay, well, to answer the first question about sharecropping, yeah, if a person is sharecropping, they have the freedom to leave, or freedom, to settle the business and move on. That's sharecropping. And when a person they may not be fair, but that person is not held against their will. Involuntary servitude, that person is forced at gunpoint, brutal beatings. They cannot leave that plantation. They cannot. They are forced to stay there until they work off that debt that they say that they occurred. Now, remember, a lot of people couldn't read and write anyway, so they had no idea of what was owed, and they wasn't going to challenge that person anyway to say, and it'd be like, "Boy, are you calling me a liar?" And the 50, what they call them, the riders, the night riders would come. This type of research here, it depends on the case. I would say, get the old newspapers, newspaper.com, and just type in that word Peonage, but talk to people in the family to find out if there was such a thing that took place in their family. Sharecropping, Peonage, had they ever heard that someone was held in bondage. And the second place would be the National Archives. That is the place where I found most of those records, especially if those records if those cases was reported to the FBI, the Department of Justice, the NAACP, and some attorneys and some people that was just good-willed people who did not like to see this happening to people. It still was reported.
in terms of just researching your family history, whether it's in state or out of state, it all begins first with you creating your family tree, getting those family stories. Well, she said they didn't have any family stories, but create the family tree, get
Mhm.
census records, birth, death, marriage records.
Yeah, and go to the free site familysearch.org and create a account and work with the census starting from 1940 and work your way back to 1870, and ask family members the questions, the oldest family member, talk to those people, talk to that family member and ask questions. How many brothers and sisters did you have? What was your parents and grandparents' name? Do you know where they live? Where are they buried at? Just those type of questions will help you along the way.
Absolutely. Um, and one last comment in the chat. I was able to locate 3 of my third great grandfather's sharecropping contracts in the Freedmen Bureau records. I
Uh-huh.
saw one that was dated 1866, and it was obvious that the landowners were attempting to keep sharecropping as close to slavery as possible.
That's right, Karen. That's right. And so it all started off with those Freeman B-roll records all the time. So I want to thank everybody that joined us for this presentation. And you can always email me at nurturingourroots at gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer some questions. And if you pass your phone number to me in the email, I'll gladly talk to you about this type of research. And so next week we have a very exciting show coming up. I'm going to pull up the announcement for next week. Carrie, you want to tell us about your guests for next week?
Yes, we have Dion Greenlee and Kevin Porter, 2 descendants of Jesuit enslaved ancestors who are going to talk to us about their research. And Kevin has taken many photographs throughout Maryland that show where some of these ancestors were enslaved. So we're really looking forward to having them because it's so important to put faces on this history and have people share the work that they've done researching their ancestors, telling the rest of their ancestor stories.
And please tune in next week, same time. And also, I would like to invite anyone to join us. Please join us on Instagram. Nurturing Our Roots have our own page on Instagram, and we ask that you please follow us on Instagram. Nurturing Our Roots, we invite you. We're at 82 people now. We're trying to get to that 100. So please follow Karen and I on Instagram, and we would be happy. Karen and I believe that the everyday people have stories, and this show is a platform to give a voice to the everyday people. So please like us on Instagram and follow us on Facebook.
Let me just make one point about that. Everyday people have stories, just as the stories you shared tonight. Every story doesn't have to be a happy story.
That's right.
I think sometimes people think, oh, I don't have a good, happy story to share. But your family history is your family history.
That's
And
right.
in the times that our ancestors lived, sometimes the stories are not happy.
They're not happy. That's right. And I do want to also make an announcement. Bernice has something, Bernice Bennett, which is another genealogist and talk show host. I love her new page, and is where I think yes, what it is, Black Homesteaders of the South. You really want to follow this page, and if your ancestors was homesteaders, Bernice Alexander Bennett is a genealogist, historian, author, and talk show producer and host, homesteading consultant for Louisiana, Florida Parish. So make sure that research your family, know your family history, document your family history, and share your family history. And I know that my co-hosts always have something to say about following us. Like that button. Karen, here it is for you.
Thank you for joining us on Nurturing Our Roots. Please give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our videos.
Wonderful. So We're growing, but we need you to help us grow to get the message out there. And if you're, once again, if your family have a story or you have a story, photographs, oral histories, or sharing your experience with us, please, we ask you to come to Nurturing Our Roots and share that story with us, because Nurturing Our Roots, the journey from slavery to freedom, there's so many different journeys along the way, and we want you to share your story with us. Anything you want to say, Karen?
And if you have any further comments, please leave them in the comments down below and we will respond. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, and good night, everyone.